Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and it's time for another installment of everyone's favorite show, What Have We Been Watching? And this week is a rather fun one because I've seen almost as many movies as Matt has seen this week, which never happens. So I think that's pretty cool.
It's a holiday week, and you finally are catching up with me. I saw Iron Claw last time we spoke. You've now seen Iron Claw. What do you think?
Well, the rumors are true. The Iron Claw boasts Zac Efron's best performance in his career. We get the typical swag, comedic elements, and charm, but here we get an additional amazing dramatic chops that we haven't really seen before out of Zac Efron. Maybe it's popped his head up a few times. Here it's on full force. The physical nature of this performance just lends itself very well to someone like Zac Efron, and I think the rest of the ensemble all has their moments to shine. Harris Dickinson fits in very well. Jeremy Allen White gets to explode as Carrie, and Holt McKenney is a commanding force looming throughout the film as the boy's father. On top of the acting performances, there's some great sound design in those wrestling scenes, the dramatic moments that leave just like your jaw on the floor when we get into some of these wrestling sequences. As some people out there may know, but some probably don't, I work in live production, so like maybe I'm not filming WWE, but like I film a lot of live sports. So like when a movie takes on like the live TV version of sports, I'm like extra judgy because there's a lot of movies that try to do football, try to do basketball, like the way they shoot is just completely wrong. It's like no broadcast would ever do this, but the way that Iron Claw did it I thought was very remarkable. It definitely has some pacing problems throughout that makes this movie feel a lot longer than what the runtime actually is, but I found myself heavily invested into the drama around the Von Erich family. This may not be one I want to rush out to watch again, but it's when I would rush to tell people to go out and watch.
I was lower on this, and here you go. You are much more the consensus. This seems to be the thing this year, man. Anytime everyone loves a movie, I'm like, eh. And you're like, yeah. I'm glad that you liked this one as much as you did. I wish that I could be on board with you. I got to rewatch The Zone of Interest this week. Finally. I have been thinking about it nonstop since I saw it at TIFF. When I saw it at TIFF, I walked out of it feeling conflicted. I was really impressed by the message of the movie, but I felt like it said everything it had to in the first 15 minutes. And then it kind of just repeated until it was over. And for that reason, I was a little bit less hot on the movie at TIFF. But then I kept thinking about it. If you watched my TIFF vlogs, you'll know that in multiple other videos, I kept talking about The Zone of Interest, even though I watched it on my first day, and I didn't love it that much. It kept lingering. And so I've been dying to rewatch it ever since. And all of my suspicions were true. I was engaged from start to finish this time. All of my previous thoughts about how this film was a little bit boring, maybe it said everything it had to say early, I think all of that is just total bullshit now. I don't know how I thought that. This movie is so deep, and yes, it may have one point to make, but it makes it so well, and the use of time and space just allows you to reflect on the points that it's making. This is one of the most difficult films that I've seen in a long time. And the reason for that is that it lets no one off easy. I've seen a lot of people online try and walk out of this feeling like, oh, it's talking about someone else. This other group is the people it's talking about. No, The Zone of Interest is talking about all of us. It's not a film about World War II. It's not a film about the Nazis. It is a film about human nature and all of our tendencies to pretend that we don't see certain things. This film is about how there are two types of people. There are people on that side of the wall, and there are people on this one. And if you are privileged enough to be sitting in that theater, safe, in a peaceful place, not directly suffering injustice, then in a way, you are complicit in injustice. This is such a difficult film, but holy shit, it blew me away. I'm moving my rating of this film up from a 7 out of 10 all the way to a 10 out of 10. This is one of my top 10 movies of the year. I am not going to stop thinking about this for a very long time.
Well, I hope to see Zone of Interest here very shortly. They talked about expanding a lot in the next few weeks. I'm traveling a lot in the next few weeks, so maybe I happen to be in a city where it is currently showing, but you went from a very insightful talk about Zone of Interest to a very unsightful talk about Seaman and the Lost Kingdom, because this is truly a fitting end to the DCEU.
Sorry, what did you just call it? Aquaman? This is Aquaman? What did you just call it?
Yeah. Seaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Oh, okay. I
Yes.
thought I heard that. Okay.
So yeah, Aquaman: The Last Kingdom is truly just a fitting end to the DCU, a cinematic universe filled of great casting decisions like Jason Momoa, endless opportunities like a character like Aquaman, while also having some of the most awful writing and poor visual effects you'll ever see in a $200+ million movie. Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, Yahya Abdul-Mateen have so much charisma in their respective roles. However, their characters are so poorly written, they just have nothing to do. Aquaman just feels like he's giving one-liner after one-liner. Ocean Master just feels very shallow, like he has one role and that's just what he has to do throughout.
I saw what you did there. Ocean Master feels very shallow. Nice.
Yeah. And Black Manta, I think is such an interesting character, but continuously just feels underutilized. I mean, people talk about seeing the Argyle trailer in front of every movie. I saw this trailer in front of every movie. So his little like rant about how he wants to destroy Aquaman, it's like stuck in my head. And that's all he does in this movie. He has nothing else to do. No other personality traits. The Lost Kingdom feels like it was created by Taika Waititi. Some people, that's probably a compliment. To me, it's a giant negative. Most of the jokes did not land for me. I know this film had multiple recuts due to the shifting landscape of the DCU, so I would love to see what a previous installment really looked like. But if this is what it takes for James Wan to get blank check horror movies made like Malignant, then give me 5 more Aquamans, James Gunn.
I do have a question for you. Critically, Aquaman is getting absolutely trashed, while earlier this year, The Flash did, like, not amazing critically, but it was not dumped on. But it seems like they're about the same quality from the way people are talking about them. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, is this really that much worse than The Flash?
If you want the honest answer, it's the Michael Keaton effect. You know, all those old heads coming out for Michael Keaton, they don't want
Right.
to see him fail. No, honestly, I think they're about the same movie. I gave Flash like a 5. I would give Aquaman like a strong 4. I think they're pretty equivalent. Flash's issue, I think it's 3 movies put into one. Aquaman feels like it's one act stretched into a full movie. They have the opposite problem, but they have the same outcome of just not feeling like a finished product. Like, I think if you cut out the last act of Flash, it's like a strong 7 out of 10. Aquaman, it just never feels like it gets off the ground.
Let's move on to the next film. I finally watched Sound of Freedom. Hoorah!
Hoorah!
Hoorah! It was my Christmas Day watch this year. I figured, in honor of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I might as well watch Sound of Freedom, because God's children are not for sale. Okay, here's the thing. I agree with what you were saying earlier this year. I don't see why this has become the center of such a political controversy. But that said, there are some moments in it. There's a few little dog whistles, like the fact that most human trafficking is not actually done across borders. It's actually within families, within people that you know. It is not going to be getting trapped and taken to Colombia. It feels a little xenophobic in how it almost feels like they knew that their base for this was really going to go for something like that. And then there's some other dog whistles in there, stuff like talking about how they were brought into trafficking because they were convinced they were going to have a shot at being in the entertainment industry. But honestly, my biggest problem with Sound of Freedom, it's a superhero movie. We see this character kicking and punching, and we see nothing about the kids. It's a film that does not care about the victims. It only purports to care about them. It reminded me a lot about the themes of May December. That is a film about people trying to make a film about a pedophile. They're thinking so hard about, ooh, what makes Julianne Moore's character tick? The person that they should have been thinking about is the Charles Melton character. Why is everyone so preoccupied with that adult character that took advantage of the child? Sound of Freedom might not be exactly the same, but it feels very similar in that it's overlooking the victims of the tragedy to give badass superhero moments to this agent figure. That's the problem with Sound of Freedom. It is a movie about child trafficking that has no interest in the children beyond props.
One thing I wish Sound of Freedom did more of was lean into jokes here and there about like the subject of how the first pedo is like the most stereotypical pedo in the world. He's got his nice collared shirt, he's got his glasses, his little mustache, he's sitting up all in his room, and sometimes when they're going out to some of the places, they are fitting some of those very stereotypical tropes of people who are like this, and I wish they would lean more into that, because like you said, the movie tries to think it's serious while not actively taking a serious approach to anything throughout the film. I just think it's a boring movie. I think that's its biggest fault.
I think I actually disagree with you on that. I think it would have been a little inappropriate for it to be funny. But that said, at the same time, how disgusting it gets at times, it feels exploitative. It feels unnecessarily graphic. And some people might argue, oh, well, if you're showing this subject matter, you have to go into this. But ultimately, in the end, with how disgusting this gets at times, with how graphic sometimes it is, a lot of what is shown in this movie should not be on any screen whatsoever. It's incredibly misguided. I think it's well made enough, but it is so devoid of anything interesting in the script, and it's so tone deaf. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10.
Well, 4 out of 10 is about the same rating I give the next movie that we're talking about, the Vroom Vroom Spectacular 2023 Ferrari, which I think lacks all the pizzazz the car company is known for. The eye-popping color, the fast-paced nature, the cool factor of owning a Ferrari, it's just not existent here. This film has nothing it wants to say or really wants to do. Michael Mann's direction just feels very odd to me, and I think this is highlighted through our performances that range from Shailene Woodley's insane major miscast, where she just cannot pull off an accent like this. You just don't buy her character at all. Adam Driver's Italian accent has gotten better from House of Gucci, but it's still not that good, and he just has nothing really to do. He walks into a room, he mumbles something, he stares, he walks away. Boom. Penelope Cruz is kind of borderline camp throughout the first half of the movie. She is going for it. She's yelling. She's shooting a gun into the wall while no one else in the movie is acting the same way. So she just feels very out of this film. Like, the direction here from Mann told Woodley to do one thing, Driver to do one thing, Cruz to do one thing, and none of those things were the same thing. Ferrari consists of some of the most awful sound mixing I have heard in a long time. Sometimes the score just drowns out a scene. Sometimes the gravel the characters are walking on overtakes their audio, so all you hear is the munching of the rocks and not Adam Driver saying this very emotional final sentence to his son at the end of the film. Sometimes the audio just stops in the middle of a scene. Like, there is a moment in the first act that's in the trailer of a car flipping where the audio just stops and then it goes into the next scene, where the scene's not over yet, but they just stop the audio, where it's not like an intentional, like, oh yeah, we're stopping for dramatic effect. And then Adam Driver gets one of the most comedic lines in the whole movie, which isn't comedic in the moment, but it's so out of left field that it's just peak memes. But I did enjoy the final 30 minutes of this movie, the final race, and the fallout for what happens to one of Ferrari's cars to be very fascinating. I think the way that Mann and cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt positions the cameras throughout these moments do add some of that spark that I think this film desperately needed. It just wasn't in the other 80 minutes of this film, and for a 2-hour movie, I would say it's about 20 minutes of where the film's actually, like, interesting.
I didn't get to see this one this week, but it sounds like you're going to be really upset when this inevitably gets nominated for Best Sound at the Oscars.
It depends on what it gets in over. I think the short list this year for sound's not that good, so, I mean, it's not the worst option there.
I'm going to talk about 2 of the documentaries that I watched, the first one being Stamped from the Beginning. This is a documentary by Roger Ross Williams. It is about racism in America, and it's specifically about how a lot of racist actions and a lot of racist rhetoric that has been espoused in America for the last 200 years was really created as a way for white landowners to hold power. It's not formally very interesting, is what I'm going to say. It will teach you something, but it's not a cinematically engaging film. And so this one I'm given a light to decent 6 out of 10. It's okay. The next Oscar shortlisted documentary that I watched was To Kill a Tiger. I actually didn't know, but this is a Canadian film apparently, so good for you, Canada. Go Canada, you're on the short list somehow. To Kill a Tiger follows the sexual violence case. I'm not going to say the word because it is potentially triggering. It follows a court case in India of a young girl, and it follows the very rare decision of her father to support her. That is definitely a powerful story. And the way it all ends up could actually end up being the beginning of immense changes in India that would be really for the better. That said, I just didn't find this to be a very interesting documentary in how it was put together. I thought it was a little bit blandly shot. I thought the storytelling wasn't really edited together in a compelling way. So while the real life story is super powerful, I just didn't find myself too captivated by this as a documentary. That's why I'm going to give this one a strong 5 out of 10.
You watched documentary. I also watched one at home with these cool fancy new headphones because how did Taylor Swift win Time Person of the Year over the frontline workers in 20 Days in Mariupol and everyone else currently covering it for the media, because that is beyond me. This is truly heartbreaking stuff. The commitment to putting yourself on the line, behind the camera, working on patients, or driving around town looking for casualties. The editing and score really adds the horror that this was going for, and that is continuing to happen in Mariupol to this day. And I just hope that more people do seek this out. It's for free on YouTube. It's not something I would really want to watch again, but it very much gets its point across. I'm not someone who really tears up, but there's multiple times throughout this documentary where they do show the effects of what Russia is doing that did get a little tear in my eye from time to time.
You're absolutely correct that this is not the type of film you're going to want to watch again and again, but it's the type of film you have to watch. They say it in the film, you're going to want to look away, but you must not. You cannot look away. It is less of a movie and much more of a historical document. This is one of the most important films of the year. If we're talking about films that are going to be talked about for years to come, 20 Days in Mariupol, I think, will become the definitive document of that war. So I watched 2 genre films this week, and I'll just group them together. I didn't really like either of these, but the first one I'm going to talk about is When Evil Lurks. It's an Argentinian horror movie. Dylan, I actually think you would like this. I personally didn't really get into it, but I know you're a big horror guy, and this is gory. It is full of insane kills, great makeup. The thing that I didn't get into in When Evil Lurks is that the monster is just so complex. When we talk about folk monsters, they always come with a specific set of rules. Like with vampires, we know that vampires can't be around garlic. We know that they're scared of a stake through the heart. We know that they don't show up in mirrors. Those are things that we understand from cultural context. I don't know if the creature in this is some type of Argentinian folk creature where I should know the rules about it going in, but it just felt like it kept making up shit as it went on. Suddenly, you can't kill the monster with a gun. Oh, actually, you can't kill it at all. Oh, actually, you can't touch it. Oh, actually, if it gets on your clothes, then suddenly other people will be getting possessed by it. Like, there's so many rules to this thing that I never got scared by the movie, despite the great kills, despite the really creative makeup work. I was never for a moment scared because I was just trying to figure out how the fuck it worked. No suspense for me. So I'm going to give this one a light to decent 5 out of 10, but it had some really good stuff. I do recommend you seek this out, Dylan, because you might feel very differently about this than I do. And the next film I watched was Leo. Nope, not the Adam Sandler chameleon movie. This is an Indian action movie that came out this year. Now, when I was working at my film festival, this was playing in the theater next door to us. Every show was sold out. Sometimes during the movie, we would hear in our theater people cheering and screaming in the other theater. So I decided to watch this because, I love Indian cinema. I wanted to see what this was all about. And Leo was not good. I don't see how a film this mid could be the movie that people were cheering like that for. It's essentially a history of violence, but as a cheesy Indian action movie. There's some fun fights, but it is just so... It's just not good. This is such a mediocre film. Nothing about it is memorable. I'm struggling to remember it enough to talk about it. I'm going to give this one a light 3 out of 10.
But I did see some animated movies, and the first one I'll talk about is Migration, which I think continues the Illumination motto of making it easy to consume, lighthearted, charming, funny comedies for the family to enjoy that they will immediately leave your mind at the conclusion of the day. Some of the stops the journey takes here are more memorable than others. Some of the birds we meet have larger impact than others, and some of the comedic bits got a little bit bigger laughs than some others did. But like I said, in one ear, out the other. Not much to take away, but it's a lot better than what the trailers make it kind of seem like it is. I would say the trailers are like the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, and it's a whole other hour 15 of the movie that's just not in the trailers, which I wish more movies marketed their films like that. I'm not the biggest Kumail Nanjiani fan, so sometimes his voice, I'm like, I don't care, I don't listen to it, but the 2 kids I think are pretty funny, and I think honestly, dive into the next movie I'm talking about, Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget, there's a lot of themes and plot devices that are very similar between these 2 two movies, having watched them back to back. Maybe it's because I have minimal connection to the original Chicken Run film, and the fact that this movie doesn't really give you much to latch onto the characters to grow attached. And I always kind of felt a distance with the majority of our cast throughout. Some moments really drew me in. I often felt like a step removed from everything that's going on. The actual breaking in, breaking out sequences I thought were super engaging, but that's about 30 minutes max of the entirety of this film, and the rest of it was kind of whatever. It features some cool animation, funny jokes, and an easy to latch on story for the most part, but this is kind of an issue I have with all Netflix original animated movies. I just find myself disinterested in them. Like, I couldn't name you one Netflix original that's not Pinocchio that I
Klaus?
could really remember. I didn't really like Klaus.
What? You didn't like Klaus?
No, and I would a lot lower on Mitchell's versus the Machines too.
What?
I would give that like a light 7.
What?
Yeah, so like I don't know if it's just watching the movie at home on the TV or what, but I just never really connect with Netflix. So maybe that's my issue with Nimona, maybe that's my issue with the Seabeast last year. I don't really know, but yeah, Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget, and Migration share like the same themes of like controlling parents, letting your children grow for themselves. I think Migration tackles those topics a little bit better in a more easy to understand and engaging way than Chicken Run does.
Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget is one of the biggest disappointments of the year for me because it just drains all of the creativity out of the first film. That first film is so unique. There's nothing else quite like it, and Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget is just like everything else. I watched 3 independent / I guess kind of experimental films, which I'll talk about all together here. The first one I watched was Blue Jean, which was one of the highest acclaimed films. It is a film set in 1980s Britain, and it follows a lesbian school teacher as she kind of struggles between 2 separate lives. How does she balance her professional life, where Margaret Thatcher's government has forbidden her from speaking about her sexuality? How does she balance that with her personal life? This is a very solid film with good performances, but honestly, there's not a whole lot exceptional about it in terms of the craft, in terms of the form. It is just an important story told well. For that, it's just going to get a 7 out of 10 for me. I thought this was well done, just not exceptional the way that some people have been raving about it. I also watched Enys Men, which is another British film. This is a fully experimental movie. It's kind of hard to explain, but I will say the cool thing about this movie, they didn't record any sound with it. They filmed it all completely silent, and then they made the soundtrack afterwards. It's this meticulously crafted soundtrack. Really well done stuff. Now, that said, I didn't really get what this movie was going for. It was a horror movie that was just absolutely not a horror movie at all. It was one of those elevated horror things that I just can't get behind. I hate so much when filmmakers put spooky music over shots of nothing and go, this is elevated horror. I don't like that. Even though I don't like this genre, this is one of the better ones. I'm going to give this one a strong 5 out of 10. And then I watched Afire. This is the new Christian Petzold movie, and I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this one. I didn't like Afire. A lot of people are raving about this as one of the best films of the year. I really don't get it. It is a very small drama about a writer that goes on a retreat to a little cottage. There is a forest fire happening somewhere nearby, but it's not really close to them. And he's just working on his new book, and he meets this woman who keeps coming around the cottage, and she reads the book and tells him it's a piece of crap, and he just sulks around. Now, a lot of people have compared this film to films of Eric Romer, like The Green Ray. I don't like Eric Romer. I don't like The Green Ray. I don't like this. I guess that makes sense to me, but you know, everyone else loves this film, so I'm just going to accept that I'm wrong and move on.
Close out the movies that I saw in this past week. We're going to go to the one that got me sick. If you can see me now, kind of deteriorating live here on screen, but I saw Anyone But You, Glenn Powell, Sydney Sweeney, hot, steamy. That's what the marketing promised us, so of course it's going to be like that. Well, it wasn't, but that's okay because it's a perfectly fine rom-com of 2 very likable leads, standard one-liners and cute moments kind of like sprinkled in throughout, but it never really elevates itself to become anything all that memorable. Is that a problem? Not at all. I'm all for more rom-coms in the market, just because we don't get many of those today, especially in theaters, and it captured my attention for the 90 minutes it was in front of me. I wish it kind of dived more into the risque parts the marketing trailers had teased. Maybe I'll catch some flack for this. I don't really find either of these people to be all that attractive, so that wasn't really a draw for me. So to me, it was kind of just watching people kind of yell at each other and make really dumb decisions, occasionally say something funny, and then hit all the rom-com tropes that you know throughout. So I would say it's fine. People who want to like it will like it. And I think that people who don't want to like it won't like it.
So to close out this week, it was Christmas time. I watched some Christmas movies. Did you know that Macaulay Culkin, right after Home Alone, was in a production of the Nutcracker Ballet?
No, I did not.
It exists. It's a real
Nice.
movie. Yeah, so I watched The Nutcracker from 1993. It is Macaulay Culkin and the New York City Ballet. What a wild combination. I'd never actually seen the Nutcracker Ballet before, so this was all brand new to me. And I'm going to be real with you. The Nutcracker might be kind of overrated. The music is gorgeous, but there's no story in that show. The premise is you get this character, they start dreaming, they fight some mice, and then they sit at a banquet and watch people dance for an hour, and then they go home. That's the story of the Nutcracker. There is no conflict, but I mean, the dancing is good. That said, it is a ballet filmed on screen, and they didn't really figure out how to make it not feel like a staged production. It was all shot in wide shots as though it was a stage, and that was pretty disappointing. I would have loved to see them try to make it a little bit more cinematic, but they didn't really go for it in that way. It was still an interesting experiment. I liked seeing the Nutcracker for the first time. I'm going to give this one a light to decent 5 out of 10. And then I rewatched A Christmas Story, one of the classic movies right there. Great lines all throughout. So quotable, infinitely, easily rewatchable. I was never a family that watched A Christmas Story every year, but my partner was, and she wanted to watch it this year, so we did. It was lovely. It was very cute. I give this one an 8 out of 10. I wouldn't mind watching this once every few years, but it's not a yearly thing for me.
Yeah, that was what we watched this week. A whole lot. I got to actually contribute more than like 3 films for a change. So that was a fun little thing. Who knows what I'll see before we record our next time. Obviously, I hope to rewatch Color Purple because I still haven't seen since that first initial viewing like months ago because I didn't make it to the additional critics screening. Boys in the Boat will be my next film I see regardless. Some George Clooney directing some good old hoorah boys taking down some Nazis in a boat, and maybe a Poor Things rewatch. It really just depends on when we record next of what I can fit into that time.
I have no idea what I'm going to see this week. Maybe Ferrari? I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I'm all over the place right now. So, yeah, I'll watch something. I won't watch some other stuff. We'll see. It'll be fun. I always watch movies. It just depends what they are. I don't know. We'll see.
Click that subscription down below because we'll just pop up right in your feed when the next What We've Been Watching videos come out. But until then, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.